I all hope everybody's doing well. This is our webinar today on marketing mix modeling, what CEOs need to know about MMM. I guess I should preface this though by saying this is not only relevant to CEOs, as we'll touch on at the end. MMM relevant for a wide range of people, agencies like ourselves, brands marketing directly themselves as well. So yeah, we'll go through sort of who this is relevant for as we get into it. But yeah, all good. We'll do some intros as we click through. So if Gordon, you just want to get started. Yeah, just quickly in terms of agenda. So why MMM? Who it is relevant for? What you should expect to get out of it? A bit of an explanation of how we approach it and what the uses are. MMM versus MTA, we're going to kind of touch on, MTA being multi-touch attribution, we're going to touch on a few times through the presentation. General recommended approach to measurement strategy, what the stages of a project look like, some figures from a case study from a client of ours that we've recently worked on an MMM with, and yeah, just a summary in terms of takeaways at the end, and a QR code for a bit of a quiz/checklist to see if your brand or agency is relevant to be running MMM for your clients or your brand itself. So quick intros to begin with. So I'm Dan, I'm the director of agency at Modo25. So basically I head up our agency services team. So as some of you may know, kind of two main branches to Modo25 as a company. We have our agency services and we have Ask Bosco, which is our reporting, forecasting, budget planning SaaS platform. I actually head up the agency side of the business, so I manage our optimization and paid teams and also our data science team. So Gordon and our very intelligent data science team, as well as working on the back end of Ask Bosco, work on individual projects for a number of our clients, like MMM and similar projects. So that sits within sort of the agency side of the business, working really closely with me and the wider agency team. Hand over to you, Gordon, for a quick intro.
Yeah, okay. I'm Gordon. I'm the lead data scientist at the company. As Dan said, work on MMM projects with various clients. We're building lots of interesting software solutions as well within the Ask Bosco platform. My previous experience in various consultancies and large online retailers. Cool. So that's me in a nutshell.
Cool. So yeah, as I say, getting into why MMM. So to start with, actually, rather than kind of going into the specifics of what it delivers and the reasons for that, if you want to just click on Gordon, a quote from Jack Dennison, who's the head of insights at Sigma Sport. So Sigma Sport, a large cycling retailer. So we've been working alongside Sigma for a long time now on a number of different projects. So conversion rate optimization, some SEO support, some paid consultancy, but more recently working on MMM with them. And yeah, I won't go through the full quote from Jack, but in terms of a couple of call outs, clear review of true marketing effectiveness and highlighting opportunities to optimize spend. So really they are the two kind of big things that we're aiming to get out of this. There are lots of individual things that cumulatively give us that output, but that's really where we're looking to get. So on to the next slide, I suppose just starting by having a quick look at traditional tracking. So people who have been in digital marketing as long as I have, so sort of 15 or so years ago, starting in just paid, I remember when everything was last click. So looking at a journey path like this, where we've got potentially a view on a TV ad, a display impression for some prospecting activity we're running, maybe a generic search followed by a branded search, and then some more display activity with a remarketing click that might end in a purchase. Back in the day, that credit would have all just have been given to that remarketing click. Obviously things have developed a fair bit since then with multi-touch attribution, which we will call MTA throughout this presentation, just to make sure people are aware. So MTA, and the most common these days being data-driven attribution, will attribute the revenue for that purchase or the value of that lead across multiple touch points, but critically, that will only be these click touch points. So even with DDA, multi-touch attribution, you're still only looking at the second half of that journey there and those click paths. So as well as sort of the limitations in terms of missing that TV and display impression, it's probably worth us touching on, if you just go on to the next slide, Gordon, why now more than ever. So even when it comes to to click tracking, we have less data than we've ever had. So having a look at sort of top level overall click volume, web traffic, whatever you want to call it. Again, going back sort of 5-6 years ago, we would have expected high levels of accuracy in terms of what Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, for example, would be reporting to us in terms of traffic to our website and how that stacks up to clicks from Google Ads or clicks from Meta or whatever it was, just total traffic. But that's no longer a full picture. We've got, obviously, has a huge implication on our reported web traffic. But alongside that, there are a number of other things which mean that even that click reporting is less accurate than it's ever been. So got ad blockers, which are not just blocking ads, but blocking JavaScript, blocking cookies that help with that ad tracking. We've got privacy first browsers, so even Safari's approach, Firefox, Brave, all again blocking some of the signals that are passed between search results and your own analytics platform, and even Chrome itself doing the same. So even from a click perspective, there's far less accuracy than there ever has been. Now, separate topic, but we are making sure all our clients are on server-side tracking, which helps close the gap for your ad blockers, your privacy browsers, those sorts of things. It can't obviously close the gap on people who have rejected consent, but there are some techniques to make this more accurate than just relying on your client-side Google Analytics, for example. But ultimately, there is always going to be a big gap in terms of traffic reported versus traffic that you've actually delivered to the website. Going on to the next slide, and this is really just to sort of reinforce that first point. Alongside that lack of traffic reported, there's the big impressions gap. So multi-touch attribution, DDA, traditional models are not going to give any credit whatsoever to the impressions that you've driven through TV, the impressions that you've driven through paid social, YouTube, whatever it is. And on top of that, we've got all these things, Gordon, if you want to start clicking through, that multi-touch attribution doesn't even attempt to account for. So what TV activity have you done? What direct mail? What does seasonality look like? What does the economy look like? Over the top of all of that, we've got factors like weather. All of these are things that MMM considers where traditional tracking models don't even begin to factor these in. So yeah, I guess going into sort of a summary of why, obviously the overall things that we're trying to do are improve the accuracy and prove the ROI on our marketing efforts. I think everyone's seen in the past sort of your blanket remarketing approach through your Criteos, for example, where it's claiming credit for every single purchase. That's ultimately where we want to get away from. Failures of tracking-based attribution, as I've gone through, we're getting less and less accuracy through your traditional tracking methods, and then the additional benefits of MMM layered over the top of that. So what impact is the weather having? What impact does stock availability have? And now with AI and MCPs, these are things that are more actionable than ever. So we're already working on a few projects where we are looking at how quickly and effectively can we use that weather data to change bidding on paid campaigns, for example. And MMM is something that's going to give us a value to that in terms of how much should we be increasing our bids, increasing our budgets based on weather. So a whole range of things that wouldn't even be possible without having that kind of background data through MMM. And in terms of what it specifically drives, so as I say, I've touched on a few of these already, but true ROI by marketing channel, where there is growth opportunity available, something that I've not really touched on. Gordon will go go through a few examples of that, but things like diminishing returns, lag effects, all of those things that are not just answering the question of how effective are we now, but how can we be more effective, and ultimately how are we able to reallocate budget most effectively, make smarter decisions to get more revenue from our marketing investment. So, handing over to Gordon to go through some of the specifics in terms of what it is and how we do it.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so in summary, marketing, Dan's given us a bit of context around it, but kind of in terms of the approach from a data science side of things, marketing mix modelling is a top-down statistical model that measures the impact of marketing and external factors on sales, and it's using historical aggregated data. So we'll see that it's obviously already apparent that that's contrasting with multi-touch attribution that's bottom up, and we'll go into a bit more detail on that. But yeah, it's a statistical model essentially. So in this slide we're talking about just trying to give you an intuition for how it works. This is it's a lot more detail to this, but it's sort of a high level. If you can get this, then you hopefully get the concept. So in terms of inputs, we are taking your marketing activity. You can measure that in different ways, but we can consider it just at a very simple level to be sort of your overall weekly impressions from Meta or Google. This is just sort of an aggregate level. We can take other factors like the price of your products or the weather or the economy, and then ultimately how much revenue you got that week. So it's quite a simple input in this simplified version. And we kind of pile those things up on top of each other in order to try and explain revenue and add different weights to those things. So this chart is attempting to explain that. So revenue being that line in yellow, we can say, well, statistically was one channel, to what extent did that contribute when our Meta activity went up high relative to our Google activity? Did that have a statistically significant effect? But it's that sort of very simplified version of how that model works. So it's that's a high level. Obviously it's a little more complicated that in practice, but if you can get that, then I think you've understood the basic concept. On top of that sort of simplified model, where we're adding those factors on top of each other to get an explanation for revenue or whatever our KPI is, underneath with sort of captured within the model, we have this notion of diminishing returns. So that's obviously an important concept within our marketing spend. We need to know whether the channel's saturated, whether we can push any more, or whether actually we've reached a point where spending more is really not benefiting us. And as we know, marketing activity often has lagged effects, particularly those sort of brand activity, and obviously it depends on the types of products that we're selling. If it's short-term stuff at the shop counter, then it's maybe doesn't last very long. But if we're selling cars or something like that, there's obviously a long consideration period. So those things are captured within the model. We use something called a Bayesian approach, which means we're also able to incorporate prior knowledge into the modelling approach. So we can use knowledge that we might have to augment the way that or yourselves or other clients might have in order to enhance the outputs of the model, make them more accurate. So we're not just relying on the raw numbers to improve the accuracy.
Just before you click on, I just wanted to really stress sort of the value of these two, sort of paid marketing and sort of the diminishing returns in particular. It's really easy, even looking at the output of MMM, to look at things on a channel by channel level and say, okay, well, according to my model, Meta's on a ROAS of £3, whereas Google's only on a ROAS of £2. Let's put more budget into Meta. But that diminishing returns ultimately should be the key piece of information that you use in terms of where to allocate and where to spend more budget, because it might be that the next pound spent isn't better spent on Meta, even though it's got the better overall ROI, ROAS, whatever the main KPI is, but it might be that next pound spent is better spent on Google. And I suppose worth saying at this point, sort of, we're focusing on sort of channel level activity, but we would also break down to lower levels of granularity, sorry, higher levels of granularity. So we wouldn't necessarily go down to keyword level, ad group level, but campaigns or groups of campaigns, so we can understand how shopping performs versus search and things like that. And then, these really strong indicators of how to allocate budget effectively through your paid activity.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, and so in addition to just measuring and looking at historical performance, we can also use it to optimize budgets and say, okay, if we reallocate our money along those, considering diminishing returns and lagged effects, how should we optimize our spend over time, reallocate between those different channels and campaign groups. So what do you get in terms of outputs from an MMM? Ultimately, we're going to understand ROIs on channels or channel campaign groups. Again, things we said already: campaign headroom, saturation. Looking at historical KPIs, so that's going to give you a different view to multi-touch attribution, and we'll get on to a little bit later about what our overall strategy should be in considering those different measurement approaches together. And crucially as well, we're able to quantify the effective internal and external factors. So this is something that clients are often very interested in, is what's the impact of weather on my sales or the economy, and these things are often things that come up at kind of board level considerations, and it's actually able to give a quantification of that. Things like stock availability, those sorts of things can also be included. So yeah, we can both look at historical performance and also make plans for future periods. Okay, so we've touched on this a little bit already, but we'll go into a bit more detail on MMM versus multi-touch attribution. So looking at this example that Dan sort of started to highlight previously, we can look at a customer journey which consists of both sort of digital interactions and offline factors. So it might be that the client's having a sort of browse online. It starts at some point, they've got a bit of awareness, and then they go out and it rains, and so you just decide that you need a brolly, and then you just go and search and click on the first sort of Google ad that you see, or one of the top ones, and you make a purchase. So obviously, in the previous world of last click attribution, all of that credit, £50 credit for the sale of the brolly, would have gone to the branded search, but obviously we know that that's not really the case. That's an oversimplification. Multi-touch attribution also only has consideration of the digital touch points, and it might have attributed £35 to the Google search and the branded search, but actually without that weather event there wouldn't have been that sale at all, so or wouldn't have been very likely. So MMM is able to factor in those external impacts and also measure the overall incrementality of those sales as well, whereas multi-touch attribution often just really tries to attribute credit to every single thing, even if it's not necessarily incremental.
Just to reiterate on that, and it's similar to the example I gave before, but going back to sort of what Gordon was talking about in terms of the output and multipliers for all of these things, sort of it's kind of quite difficult when you're looking at one journey like this to kind of contextualize it and say, okay, how do I use that information? We've allocated £15 of this credit towards the weather. What do I do with that? But if we're thinking about it in terms of multipliers, which is what we get out from one of the things that we get out from MMM, that's where we can then say, oh, hey, actually the weather is a 20% multiplier on our Google Ads effectiveness, and that's where we can begin to use that data, and weather's maybe a little bit of an obscure one, maybe it's product availability, stock, those sorts of things, but we can use those multipliers to inform our budget and bidding decisions.
And I'd add to that to say also it gives us maybe a more realistic view of ROIs as well, so you might get sort of over credit to some of those other channels if you don't consider those other factors. So yeah, quite a lot of information there, but overall it's MMM is a top-down approach. It's aggregate. We only need aggregate data. We don't need to track every single customer journey. MMM can capture online and offline interactions. It's not concerned with cookies. We don't need to worry about cookie deprecation, privacy concerns. And in terms of how you actually use it, MMM should be more at a kind of planning level. It's a strategic tool, so it should be, whereas multi-touch attribution is more of a tactical tool. You're using that all the time, or on a daily basis. Your teams are, sub-daily even. But yeah, MMM would be running sort of less frequently, maybe quarterly, half-yearly, annually, to look at overall budget allocations between marketing buckets, essentially, budgets in terms of different buckets. Okay, So how does this all fit together? When we talked about these different things, multi-touch attribution, MMM, and then there's also, obviously we're aware of incrementality testing is another very important factor as well. So we've got these various different ways of measuring our marketing performance. How do they fit together? So it's basically important to factor those various things in together as tools in our arsenal, not just rely on one thing, multi-touch attribution or just MMM, but these all look at, we're basically using all those tools to triangulate on a solution. This is an image from the Google Modern Measurement Playbook, which goes into quite a lot of detail about sort of Google's recommended approach to using these things together. But effectively, we're doing things like using our incrementality tests. So obviously, that's quite a narrow view, isn't it? You can run incrementality tests at a sort of small level. We're using that as a ground truth. We get a little window, a little view. We can use that to inform our MMM, which takes the broad view that sets overall budgets, looks at overall returns on investment, and then at a more granular level, we're using that attribution on a daily basis. So it's using those things all in combination. So definitely MMM is a really valuable part of that marketing measurement approach. There's sort of no silver bullet, but you need to use all these things in combination. I'll just make a little plug for one of our other software tools within the Ask Bosco platform. We're taking some of that data in your attributed data and trying to provide insights on top of that. So we take your attribution and then we run optimization and make recommendations and so on top of that, and then that can be used to inform MMM and so on. But anyway, so we're sort of working on various elements of this problem to give you insights. But that's the way to think about it. In terms of running a MMM project with clients, this is quite simplified, but ultimately we're looking at data collection. It's the first stage. So as I mentioned, we've got this software platform called Ask Bosco, where we automatically ingest all of your marketing data very straightforwardly. I've run MMM projects at previous companies where I've had to do this myself, or we've had to do this internally, and it can be a huge burden to extract all that relevant data, and then also to be able to do that semi-regularly is an enormous effort, and Ask Bosco really gives you that kind of a click of a button. Obviously, some of the data we don't have available, something like some of your internal data, maybe like stock availability, something like that. We do connect to Shopify as well, so and retail platforms, so you can pull that data out, retail data and so on. But sometimes clients don't have that data readily available in the platform, so you might need to supply that to us. And then we also pull out that external data is available in platforms, some of the typical ones. But if there's other factors you want to consider, we can bring those in. Then our data science team, sort of my team, would then go in, work on the MMM, develop that for you, bit of back and forth on the modelling, make sure we're capturing all those insights that you have into the modelling, run various budget optimization scenarios that you're interested in, and then report back and deliver the insights and recommendations. That also in the short term, in the fairly near future, will be available in our platform, Ask Bosco, so you can self-serve on that as well, and then it will, we'd be updating that on a regular basis to review and understand those recommendations over time and see how they evolve over time. Case studies. So Dan's already mentioned that this case study with Sigma Sports, just a kind of a high-level outputs. This was a really important project for them, and it enabled them to understand their ROIs on various marketing channels or campaign groups, and things that they'd never had any insights onto previously, things like out-of-home advertising that was non-digital. They just were kind of doing that without any real quantification or justification, so that was a really important outcome from the project. And again, they really wanted those insights on stock availability, so they could start to quantify the impact of not having that stock available, and justify potentially investments in that area. And again, sports retail is very dependent on weather, so it would help them to plan on that and quantify the effects of those sorts of things. Fairly good improvements of budgets over the optimization period that they were looking at. So it's identified a 80k benefit over that period, and again giving them insights that they didn't have from their previous attribution approach. So looking at it was providing additional justification for things like upper funnel activity, paid social activity, and out of home. So really that additional view, that different view on things was helping them understand some of the things that they were considering already, and having questions about from their multi-touch attribution stuff. There's identifying those limitations and supporting those decisions.
Yeah, and again, just to chip in to stress some of those points, we've talked about sort of the external factors and things like weather and stock a few times, but I'm going to chip in here and sort of stress the point around sort of other marketing channels. So across sort of our sort of clients and businesses that we work with Ask Bosco, a large number of them running catalogue activity or activity on TV and things like that, and obviously there are kind of individual measurement techniques for each of those channels, but MMM is really kind of the glue that sticks everything together, pulls everything together. And how does running TV impact my Google Ads? How does running TV impact the value of my SEO activity, things like that, and being able to to put a value on channels that are historically difficult to measure, measured in silo, and kind of not assessed on the same kind of KPIs that you would traditionally. The benefit of digital marketing is they're the only channels where we can put a very sort of granular and accurate ROI on them. Getting that across channels like out of home, catalogue, TV, really, really valuable to, again, assessing that full budget mix across online and offline.
Cool. Okay, so just some key takeaways regarding MMM, and then we can have some questions afterwards. So I'd say top three things are: it's important to understand that MMM is a very important tool for marketing measurement, and it is complementary to multi-touch attribution as opposed to an alternative to it. And it should also sit alongside incrementality testing, which is of course that ground truth about the effectiveness of campaigns. And critically, it's privacy safe as well, which is why it's seeing a real resurgence at this point in time. It's ultimately used at a strategic level for budget planning and measurement, and therefore optimization, and it enables to quantify some of those other factors like non-difficult to measure marketing activity, lags and diminishing returns. Okay, Dan?
Just in terms of who it's for, and I suppose I'll contextualize this by talking about sort of how we use it. So I guess at the three different levels, I suppose the most senior level, this is something that our kind of account directors are working with the sort of marketing directors internally to help with overall reporting and budget planning. So having confidence around the value of both online and offline marketing efforts, and also using the output to justify where additional investment is necessary, where to put it, what, as I say, the diminishing returns on that is, so that when we are requesting more budget, we're doing it in an educated way and a tactical way that's going to get the best out of that. And then I suppose the next level down is the operational teams. So your PPC directors, account managers, and that's where, going back to sort of where Gordon was talking about the modern measurement process, that's where we're combining MMM with multi-touch attribution to make decisions at a more granular level. So we on almost all cases, this isn't a replacement for your multi-touch attribution, but this is helping to overlay over the top of that and give additional insight and value into it, so that we are making sure that we can credit impressions on YouTube, traffic through Reddit, we can value that with more than just the sort of independent reporting that each of those platforms have. So account managers are using this to determine how much budget should we be putting into each level of the funnel: display activity, social activity, and then, as I said before, even down to a bit more of a granular level within like your PPC, for example. How incremental is your shopping activity, PMAX activity, compared to your search activity? So using this information to help determine where to place budgets at a platform and campaign level. And then not the next level down, but another team using it. So Gordon's team working with our operational teams quite often, using this to put confidence into the forecasts that we're providing. So whether that's forecasting at current budget levels and what we're currently delivering, or whether that's forecasting, as I say, incremental budgets, where to put it and what we'd expect to get from that. Obviously hugely valuable being able to justify with such a robust model what we're expecting to get from that additional expense. And then in terms of a very brief checklist, and there is a more comprehensive checklist, if you want to scan the QR code there, that will take you to a longer checklist of who is most appropriate for. But the three biggest ones: cross-channel marketing activity. So it doesn't necessarily need to be both online and offline. As I said, there is huge amounts of value to this, even if it's just looking at online channels and the comparison of sort of your impression based channels versus your click based channels, but also, as I say, cross-channel online and offline. What impact is TV having, what impact is direct mail having, whatever it is. That is by far the biggest one on the checklist, because if you're just running PPC and sort of that's your sole marketing effort, there's very little value to be had. In some extreme cases there may still be value, but usually it's the cross-channel where you're going to get the most from this. One of the only musts, I would say, is the 2 years of marketing data, and that's really just because the more data we've got, the more accurate the model will be. Less than 2 years and there is going to be limitations to the accuracy. So basically, the more data we have, the better decision making we can make from this. And in terms of what we'd expect from that data in terms of granularity, daily or weekly is preferred. Again, if we only have monthly segmented like cost and traffic data, that's only across 2 years, 24 data points for us to be looking at, not a lot to model from. So yeah, ideally we want this to be daily or weekly. Obviously there can be some flex in some cases. So if we've got all of our digital activity daily, we've got all of our retail store performance weekly perhaps, but we've only got our spend on TV activity monthly, we can obviously take that TV spend that's monthly and we can split it out by week, whether that's flat based on the month or whether that's weighted based on what we know to be some seasonal impact over that particular month. So there is some flex there, but generally, yeah, the big two are 2 years of data segmented to at least weekly. But yeah, for the full checklist, if you check the QR code, there's more information there. And yeah, I think that just takes us on to any questions. So a couple of questions. So first one, which probably came in just before I went through that last piece there, is there a minimum amount of historical data? So yeah, 2 years would be the minimum, the more the better. Yeah, not much more to say on that. For teams currently relying heavily on multi-touch attribution, what's one thing they're most likely getting wrong about their channel performance? I will take that one, and it is almost definitely going to be the value of social and the value of display activity. So multi-touch attribution, again, being focused on clicks. Even the best data-driven attribution in the world is not giving sufficient value to views on YouTube, views on Meta, engagements on Meta ad, because they're not part of that modeling. And there are brands out there that have purely grown on that visibility across social platforms, and a traditional sort of data-driven, sort of click-based attribution model is not going to have given any value to that activity across your social and display channels. I'll give this next one to you, Gordon, but then I'll chip in afterwards. So are there any specific channels or industries where MMM performs particularly well in a cookieless environment? Any thoughts from you, I guess, on the channels and industry in particular?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, we touched on already the fact that those channels that are typically harder to measure, some of the upper funnel stuff, we've had clients using Tube, London Tube advertising, out of home. That's obviously one where it's difficult to measure performance. In terms of industries, thinking of certain clients where multi-touch attribution can be difficult to measure, where things like there's long consideration periods, or the purchases are sort of erratic or less frequent. So something like luxury travel, I'm thinking of a luxury travel client, where those multi-touch conversions are very irregular, whereas when you're looking at a high level, you can sort of aggregate things up, look at that spend over a period of time, and that's an example where MMM would be particularly useful. So I think the areas where multi-touch typically struggles would be an example.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it with from a cookie point of view, longer cookie windows. I guess the only thing, longer decision-making process where cookie windows become an issue. I think the only other thing to add would be that there's certainly some industries where we are seeing higher levels of rejection of cookies than others. So ones that spring to mind, anything medical related. So some data that we've got from cosmetic surgery client, private healthcare client, the number of people rejecting cookies on healthcare related things, legal related, is typically higher than retail, for example. So that's where the sort of the cookie aspect might become more of an issue and more value through MMM. And I guess the only other one to mention from an industry point of view, and again we keep coming back to it, but industries where external factors are more likely to have a bearing on performance. So we've talked about sort of sports and weather, for example, but also big purchases and the economy. So a lot of home related, like big home related purchase, for example, things like that are more likely to be affected by general sort of economic factors, and again that's something that the right model can help you account for, plan for, and understand. Final questions: how do we handle offline channels like TV, out of home, or events with an MMM model?
It depends on the channel, but for example, clients seeing out of home, you would typically get levels of impressions for out of home estimated by the vendor. So really, we take that weekly level data about outcomes and feed that into the model. I don't know if Dan wants to go into more detail on that.
Yeah, so I guess taking TV as an example, I mean the main metric that we're going to feed into the model, or one of the main metrics, is spend, because we want to get an understanding of ROI from that activity. So plugging in the spend is going to obviously be essential for us to do that. We can also plug in, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Gordon, but we can plug in sort of estimated viewing figures as well for something like TV. So in the same way that for your direct digital channels, we're putting in your click data, for your social and display channels, we'll be putting in your impression data, that there can be value to putting in estimated view figures through your TV activity as well, to see what impacts that has. Yeah, out of home, likewise in terms of spend, and then things like, I guess just covering some others, so like catalogue activity, obviously allocating a budget towards that, but also looking at things like how many users were on the mailing list for the catalogue, and getting that data in as well to be a factor in the impact of that as a channel influencing purchases. I think we're done for questions, and I think we're almost there for time as well. So thank you, Gordon. Hope that was useful for everyone. Hopefully you got the QR code. If not, ping a message through our website, and obviously we can get in touch to chat more about MMM or anything else you need. Cheers, Gordon.